Good morning, everybody. We are live. It is Thursday, June 11th at 10:01 a.m. Eastern Time, 9:01 a.m. Central Time. I only say that because we frequently get people commenting on our videos, maybe thinking that we're live, but we've already had the podcast a day or two earlier. So thanks for tuning in and hanging out with us, whether you are live or whether you're watching us later. This is the Going Broadway podcast. We're on episode number 40. This is nuts. But yeah, we appreciate you guys tuning in and supporting us. By the way, my name is Alex. If this is your first time tuning in, let us know. We'd like to give you a proper shout out. And to my left is Cole. Cole, what is going on?
And it's a great day. It's really nice outside. Actually, 2 great shows last night. I felt like both of them put on a decent product, so it's a great day.
It is a fantastic day. Now, that being said, we won't be doing recaps today because we are going to do Ask the Hosts. So for you guys that are tuning in, by the way, just a blanket good morning to everybody that has commented. Again, thanks for tuning in and hanging out with us. We're going to do an Ask the Hosts segment shortly, so get your questions in. Excuse me. Like I've said before, we do like to keep our chat thread free of any kind of profanity, vulgar language, etc. So please help us out by doing that. Keep all of the questions and otherwise just comments, free of any of that stuff. Keep it clean, But you can ask us anything, whether it's about wrestling or not. We'll get questions about, we'll get questions about belts, which is, I guess, wrestling related. But ask us anything you want. Christian, first-time listener, I love it. Thanks for tuning in. We appreciate it. And then we're going to do our predictions for WWE Backlash that is this Sunday. Speaking of Backlash, and speaking of a special announcement I was going to make, I'm going to make that announcement now. So, I guess technically Sunday is next week. So next week, we will not be live 1 time. We will not be live 2 times. We will be live 3 times next week, if you include this upcoming Sunday, because this upcoming Sunday, we will be doing a special watch party of WWE Backlash from right here in the studio. So tune in and hang out with us this Sunday at 7 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Central Time. We'd love for you to hang out and talk with us while we're watching Backlash, and I'll post that on our social media pages later on, so you guys can again plan on tuning in and hanging out with us Sunday evening, 7 p.m. Excuse me, I'm used to saying a.m. 7 p.m. Eastern Time, 6 p.m. Central Time. Hang out with us, watch Backlash with us. It'll be fun. We do have some comments about Mr. Wrestling number 2. Thoughts and prayers out to his family. For those of you that are not familiar or otherwise old school fans, Mr. Wrestling number 2 was a big popular wrestler in the territory days in the 60s and 70s. He passed away yesterday at the age of 85, I want to say. If I'm wrong on that, someone correct me, and I apologize. He was in his 80s. That's what I remember. But yeah, thoughts and prayers out to his family. And on that note, that's why I posted yesterday as kind of a tribute kind of thing. I'll post, teaser belt giveaway posts, I'll call it, pretty frequently. And yesterday I posted some belts from Georgia Championship Wrestling, which is, where Mr. Wrestling 2 got his biggest run, his biggest popularity. That's where he spent most of his career, I believe, as well. So, but I'll tell you what, let's roll into the show. We'll get to the Ask the Host segment shortly, so get your questions in. Like I said, ask us anything as long as it's clean, no profanity, no vulgar language. We'll get to it. So, wanted to bring up a few topics this morning. Excuse me. I read this morning, and if you'll notice, if you watched AEW last night, Billy Gunn, they're kind of giving him the Cody treatment. If you've noticed, they're not using Gunn in his name. They're just referring to him as Billy. And so, more than likely, it's been speculated that WWE sent a cease and desist letter to AEW. Now we know they're calling them the Gun Club. Him and his son Austin. They're referring to them as Billy and Austin Gunn, so you don't really notice. It's kind of akin to what they did with Cody and Brandy Rhodes whenever they did their indie stuff prior to AEW forming. But I read this morning. I thought it was interesting. I actually did not pick up on it last night, or frankly, any other time they may have just been referring to him as Billy. But Cole, what are your thoughts on that?
It doesn't shock me. I mean,
petty WWE.
I mean, at the end of the day, if you own the rights to the name, you have the right to tell somebody not to use it.
Agreed.
I work in, on the music side of things. When I do music and stuff, a lot of people when they first start off, they do remixes and stuff of people's songs, and if they feel like it's getting them too much attention, they send you a cease and desist there. So it doesn't shock me. If you own rights to the name, you have the right to tell someone not to use it. I don't think Billy Gunn was getting so much exposure with it that it was that big of a deal. But obviously WWE is trying to make sure people know that they're not going to allow people to walk on them. So I think it was just them showing, hey, you're going to operate in the right legal ways, at least with us.
Yeah, I mean, and it's not one of those topics that, we're not going to talk long on it. I mean, frankly, it is what it is. It's just, I guess at what point, if you're WWE, do you kind of just say, yeah, we own it, but are we really going to, is AEW really going to profit enough or make money off the fact that it's Billy Gunn? No offense to Billy Gunn, but whether they call him Billy or Billy Gunn, I don't think it's really going to matter. They're still going to use the term Gun Club. They're still going to say Billy and Austin Gunn. I can see if it was Cody and Brandy, that's kind of a different situation, but I don't know. I read that this morning. I'm just kind of like, really? WWE? I don't know. I was kind of disappointed in it, but I want to see what you guys think, if you have any comments on it. Andrew says, I wonder if WWE owns the trademark to Rockabilly. I don't know. Again, if they do, I don't know. I barely remember Rockabilly, to be completely honest with you. We've got people, not to get off topic, we have people asking about our belt giveaways. Please refer to our Facebook pages for info on that. There should be a post pinned to the top of our Facebook page. Generally, I'm not going to answer any more questions as far as our belt giveaways go. All of our information's on the page. I will say our next belt giveaway will be once we hit 5,000 Facebook likes and 1,000 Twitter followers. We've already hit our benchmarks, so to speak, on Instagram and YouTube. But we've still got about 950 to go on Facebook and then maybe 50-ish on Twitter. So, but I've said it before, that's where you guys need to help us out a little bit, share our pages with your friends, and help us get there. Don says Billy Gunn needs to retire already. He still looks good, though. I agree. I mean, if he's still got stuff left in the tank and he's getting paid, he likes being in the ring, I mean, more power to him. Mike says, I thought the Billy Gunn trademark expired for WWE.
That doesn't mean they swept it back up under the rug. I mean,
yeah, I mean, something like that. Wrestling websites aren't going to necessarily pick up the fact that WWE renewed that trademark. I mean, because that's just kind of like Cole said. It's one of those, it'll be not swept under the rug purposely. Again, it's just one of those things that what wrestling websites aren't necessarily going to pick up little things that, WWE renews their trademark for Billy Gunn or for, I don't know, whatever else that might be out there that's kind of, I don't want to say, not small time. That's not how I'm trying to phrase it. It's not a knock on Billy Gunn or anybody by any means. It's just, it's not the name value that you would expect. Let's see. Any other thoughts from you guys on that? Ferdinand says, Billy could use his real name like he did in TNA, albeit he used Kip James, but whatever. I mean, I'm okay with them using Billy. I think that still has more recognition than Kip James. I mean,
more of wrestling switching to that kind of one name thing anyways. A lot of especially like WWE, they're taking a lot of their guys and shortening their names to begin with because people, I guess studies show that they cater more to a shorter name or a shorter, a quicker thing to say, I guess. I don't know. I don't mind a full name. I don't mind someone with a first and last name, but I guess they feel like they need to switch to just calling people this name or that name or whatever the case may be.
And if you're a first-time viewer, we have motion-activated lights in our studio. So if Cole and I aren't if we're not animated enough, our lights tend to go out. I just noticed your shirt, by the way. That's sharp.
Yeah, people always like to comment on Alex's cool shirts, and only one person ever comments on mine. I was like, today I purposely wore the Sting one. I was like, you know what?
I think
We have a lot of old school fans on our podcast. I'm going to show up old school. And then everyone's like, oh, check out the Ricky Steamboat shirt. And I was like, what about the Sting shirt?
Cole gets the T-shirt win today. I mean, I've got Ricky Steamboat, but that Sting shirt takes the win. Yeah, Ryan, I appreciate your comment. He says, guys, the belt giveaway is a bonus. Watch the show. And that's why going forward, that I'm not going to announce the winners. If you guys want to see if you won, you got to check us out. I will be very open and repeatedly post on our social media pages when we're going to rewind when we're going to do our next belt giveaway. So you have to check us out. Matt says just go by BG. Yeah, Mark says Cole stepping up his shirt game.
I knew he should appreciate it.
David says, are y'all in the same place? Yes, we are. I'll prove it to you. Right here. Look at that. That was the first time we've ever done that. So, yeah, we're in the same place. That's why I say always on our intro, I'll say to my left is Cole. He's literally to my left. Let's see. Andrew says, if it's a single name, it ought to be something like Animal or Sting, not Billy or Cody. I don't know if I agree. I mean, if they have facial recognition, I guess, and they went by that first name initially, I mean, I'm okay with it. The reason I brought it up is it just seems like another case of WWE being a little petty, but at the same time, if they own it and they don't want another company who they obviously view as competition now using it, then fair enough. Thomas says, love the show. I appreciate it. Really, sincerely. What else can we talk about? I guess we'll talk about a couple of things from last night. We won't do a full-on recap, but NXT is kind of teased. NXT kind of teased a lot of things last night. They teased Finn Balor going after Keith Lee for the North American title. They teased Karrion Kross going after the NXT title. They teased Keith Lee going after the NXT title. As this was going on, I kind of thought this kind of feels like AEW setting up their storylines and kind of keeping things open-ended and keeping us guessing, which is good. Don't get me wrong. I fully credit NXT for doing this. Ultimately, though, Cole, I'll ask you, do you think it's a two-part question. Do you think it's going to be Finn Balor and Keith Lee for the North American title? Do you think it's going to be Karrion Kross and Adam Cole for the NXT title?
I think they made their intentions pretty clear. I think the Keith Lee thing now, kind of looking back on it, makes a little bit more sense that they mentioned it because so many people are demanding it in a sense. So I think they're just trying to make sure the fans know that they hear them and that time will come. Because Keith Lee kind of mentioned, the way he kind of teased it was, I've been kind of trying to think of what's next for Keith Lee, but, now I kind of see what I want to do. And, it's kind of looking at Adam Cole. And so I think ultimately you don't have Scarlett come out to the ring last night with a what do they call those things? The sand timepieces that drop the sand down. I forget what they call those.
An hourglass.
Hourglass, yes. You don't have her come out with that and tease it that heavy if that's not gonna happen. My more curious thing would be when it happens. I don't know if they're just teasing that and that could be 2 takeovers from now. This is kind of a long kind of hunt down for Karrion. They might put someone else in the title picture for the next takeover and then do Karrion Kross as he kind of hunts down Adam Cole. You could see a Keith Lee versus Adam Cole on NXT here the next couple of weeks where the title doesn't really change hands for either of them. It's just a really good match. I think Finn Balor might be the one to beat Keith Lee and get the belt off of him. One, Finn Balor's never held the North American title, so it would be something good to give Finn Balor for a little while. Not that it isn't relevant with Keith Lee, but to keep the relevance of the belt when you take it off of Keith Lee, and then setting up Keith Lee to eventually be able to either make the main roster jump or to take the NXT championship. My problem is that I don't want Keith Lee and Karrion Kross to fight that early. So they're trying to set Keith Lee up for a main title picture kind of shot. And then Karrion Kross is the guy, though. Karrion Kross will be a guy that holds the belt for a while. I just don't see him holding it for 60 days and then dropping it. I feel like he'll have a very long title run as well.
So you think Keith Lee is going to go to Raw or SmackDown before before he has a chance to get the NXT title?
I just don't see him. I think him and the Undisputed Era and some of those guys are going to get called up, and I don't think Keith Lee, to me, needs to hold the NXT championship before he gets called up. I think he's clearly ready. So unless he either wants to stay and they're granting that, or they still think he needs a little bit more time. I just don't know how you could even tease names like Chelsea Green and Dijakovic and some of those guys and think that they're ready and not think that Keith Lee isn't. So,
well, I read, let's see, probably would have been Tuesday that I read that they're pressing pause on the NXT quote unquote call ups. Again, I hate calling it that. I hate that anyone else refers to it at that, because NXT is not a developmental roster. I mean, you've got guys on there that are more talented than guys on Raw and SmackDown. That being said, I still think we'll see Velveteen Dream on NXT for a while. Again, if they're putting the if they're pushing the pause button on these Raw and SmackDown transitions, I'll call it, that means Velveteen Dream will probably stay. I wouldn't be at all surprised if Dijakovic stays. Chelsea Green, I wouldn't be surprised either way if she goes or if she stays. But if she stays, it kind of wastes the fact that they did away with the whole Robert Stone gimmick storyline, because it's pretty apparent that they had her drop him in storyline because they have plans for her to move to Raw or SmackDown. So it's going to be an interesting next I'd say month or so, as far as, let's see, I mean, it's June 11th, so I'd say if they're going to move anybody, it'll be within the next month and a half. I'd say by late July, if anyone's being moved, we'll see it. Andrew says Balor will cost Lee against Cole and then transition into Cross. Potentially. William says Balor versus Adam Cole would be a great match. Former Bullet Club members.
That's kind of where I thought it was headed when Finn Balor beat Priest.
Same
I thought
here.
It was kind of setting up for a Finn Balor Adam Cole thing, and then they kind of swerved us a little bit, which I'm okay with. I think Finn Balor versus Keith Lee is going to be, I didn't even ever think of that matchup, to be honest.
Yeah.
So I think that's going to be a really great match, actually.
I don't mind it.
And like I said, I think if you're going to take the belt off Keith Lee for the North American title, you got to give it to somebody who can keep the belt relevant, and I think Finn Balor is a perfect candidate for that.
Yeah, I'm okay with it. I just, like you said, I didn't see that coming. I just thought it was going to be maybe Cole, maybe a situation where maybe you have like a Balor and Adam Cole feud for the NXT belt. If they're going to do that, I thought in my mind maybe they'll keep the storyline going with Keith Lee and Johnny Gargano for the North American title. But then that kind of leaves, like, where do you put Karrion Kross? Do you continue his feud with Tommaso Ciampa? Which, again, that's kind of what I thought. I thought that if he and Ciampa don't have any more matches, I kind of view their match at TakeOver in Your House a little bit differently. I'm kind of viewing it in the lens that, yes, they wanted to put Kross over and make him seem dominant against Ciampa, which is fine, but don't have it be a one-off match. I mean, you kind of built the storyline to where it seemed like they were going to have a feud, and if the payoff is going to be a 6.5-minute match where Ciampa maybe got in a minute of offense and that was it, you did kind of make Ciampa look bad if you don't have any more matches, in my opinion. At the time, I thought, okay, they're going to have another match or two, and it'll make Ciampa look a little more competitive, but if that's going to be it.
Now, they did tease the interview with Ciampa last night after the match, and he didn't really say anything. He just hopped in his car and went. So this is why I think the reason why they teased so many different kind of avenues last night is not because they're not unsure of where they're going to go. I think it's because you're going to see a lot of these storylines kind of take place at the same time as they kind of hold off until the next takeover. Because if I'm not mistaken, the next one's probably not going to be until August. If I had to guess, they might have one in July.
Another takeover?
Yeah.
I think the next takeover will probably be
before SummerSlam.
Yeah, if they do it, which I mean I'll rephrase. They're going to have SummerSlam. It's just a matter of where it's going to be, if we're going to have a crowd, etc. So we'll have an NXT takeover. We'll have a SummerSlam. The takeover will probably be the night before SummerSlam, but I think that's going to be our next one.
Right. And so with that being, technically 2 months away, in a sense, you have a lot of NXT shows to fill, a lot of kind of excitement that you got to keep going. So I just kind of feel like they're keeping the doors open in that regard, so they can kind of keep the storylines wide spectrum to keep building off of, which is why I think Karrion's going to kind of play around with Adam Cole for the next 2 months, but you won't really see a whole lot of interaction, maybe just a tease of him stalking him here or checking in on him here, maybe an attack here or there, but nothing that results into a title match on an NXT show that quick.
Yeah.
Where you might see a Keith Lee versus Adam Cole here in the next 2-3 weeks. It just doesn't. You never know what could happen.
Rick Harvey says they don't have a plan. If you're referring to NXT, I disagree.
They have a plan.
They've got a plan. And don't get me wrong, I'm not a WWE apologist. I've made my opinions very well known on our podcast that I think from a creative standpoint over the last, we've been doing this podcast for 5 months. In that 5 months time, I've been very openly critical about their creative ideas and executions and things like that. But I think they've got a plan. I think, Triple H, Shawn Michaels, whoever else Road Dogg, whoever else runs stuff behind the scenes at NXT, I think they know what they want to do. That's not to say that they're perfect. Again, if they don't have another match with Ciampa and Cross, I think that was kind of wasted in my opinion. But long term, I think they do have a plan as far as the NXT title picture, the North American title picture, and I think we'll see some interesting things over the next few weeks. Particularly next week, NXT has a pretty stacked card. We've got a NXT tag title match. We've got a WWE Women's Tag Title match. I would almost be okay if Tegan and Shotzi win the women's tag belts. It'd be something new. It'd be something fresh. Not that it's going to happen. Don't get me wrong.
As much as I agree with you on that, I actually they'll have changed the title so many times here recently, because I don't think the belts are going to stay on Sasha and Bayley. I'll get to my reason why when we do our predictions later on the show. Mm-hmm. But I just don't feel like when you keep flipping the title, it doesn't make a lot of sense. Nor do I think they want those belts on NXT. So I just don't think that it's going to happen. But they could shock us. They could surprise us. I do, just because I keep seeing everybody talk about this. Mark Maggart says that since Charlotte lost the NXT title, I read that she now wants to challenge for men's titles. I want to speak to that real quick.
Hold on, before you get, I feel a long-winded answer comment coming, and that's totally fine. I want to make my thoughts on it short and sweet. If WWE has Charlotte win a men's title, I will not cover WWE anymore on this podcast. You have my word on it. It's one thing for Tessa to win the Impact men's title, whatever. And that's, by the way, that's not why we don't talk about Impact too much. It's just I don't really watch it a whole lot. If Charlotte wins a men's title in WWE, I will not be covering WWE on this podcast anymore, period. And I'm 100% dead serious on that. I'll be so disgusted with that. Continue.
So the comments that were made a while back. Like, people are kind of taking that comment and now trying to put it to now. She said that back when Tessa won the belt. It wasn't something that she said when she dropped the NXT title here more recently. That was a comment and something that she made in an interview around the time that Tessa won the belt. And so she was just kind of, and she never really said that she wants to pursue it in WWE. She never said that was really in her picture. She just said that would be something that she would be interested in doing at some point. She never once says, I now want to pursue a men's title.
Right.
She just said that was cool. She thought it was interesting, different, and thought, hey, maybe at some point I would want to do that as well. And said that really anytime women do something great in wrestling, it's good for all women. It's good for the women's revolution that they're doing. And so she said, if one succeeds, we all succeed. And I agree with that. So I don't think that this is as big about trying to make sure that, we understand that Charlotte wants to challenge for a men's title. I don't think that's even in the cards.
And I hope not.
I mean, in the past, WWE has played that a little bit. They had, what was it? China won the Intercontinental.
Different time period, though.
Right. And so, I mean, depending on the storyline, if it was a mid-card belt, I could understand it a little bit. But as far as a world title goes, and as far as WWE goes, I just don't even think that's on the cards, and I really don't see WWE even entertaining that thought for their main title belt. I could see them entertaining it for United States or Intercontinental, given the storyline being the right one. It would have to be the right storyline for me to really get behind it, but I just don't think it's even in the cards. I think Charlotte dropped the NXT women's belt because they needed somebody else on Raw. They needed another big name to kind of feud since Becky stepped out. I don't think they're really big. I think they're seeing there's a lot of problems with Nia going forward. So after this title match that she has, I think you might see the reins get pulled back on her. Mm-hmm. So you got to have somebody to kind of step into those roles. And Charlotte, as much as she gets hated on, I saw that there's a petition out there right now that people are signing so she doesn't win any more title belts. I think that's funny. Charlotte's talented. She's a talented wrestler. She's good. She's good on the mic. I think that they just took the belt off her because they need her on Raw more than they need her to run the NXT women's division.
I want to address a question. Reginald says, if China can win the Intercontinental Championship, why can't Charlotte try? Women equal now, right? And then Michael also says, China IC title, Jacqueline Cruiserweight title, and WCW Medusa win Cruiserweight title. Here's why I've never been a fan of women winning men's titles. Number one, in a perfect world, I guess, men won't go for women's titles. Now, we've had exceptions to that as well. Harvey Whippleman back in the day won the women's title. Wasn't a fan of that. When it comes down to it, guys and ladies, you've got, in competitive sports, you've got, I'll equate it to the Olympics. You've got a men's division and a women's division. In wrestling, they've even said you've got a men's division and a women's division. If you want to do intergender wrestling, number one, I wouldn't be a fan of it, but whatever. That's just me. But if you want to do that, then do away with the gender-specific titles. Don't call them men's titles. Don't call them women's titles. Just say, hey, we're going to have championship belts that are not gender-specific, and then just do it. I mean, I'm not saying I would be a fan of it because I wouldn't be. I think it would be silly. That's just me, because I think I don't think there is a need for, and this I won't share too much of my personal beliefs, I guess, but other than to say I don't think men and women should have so much contact like that, because it can create obvious conflicting issues behind the scenes. I'll just leave it at that. And I think you'll have, people that are in, relationships behind the scenes will get it would create a mess. I'll just leave it at that.
I think you brought up a really good point too, to the fact that if we're going to put titles on it, as far as that this is a men's thing or a women's thing, you can even look at WWE. Like, there was something that they did that didn't really make a whole lot of sense. I think 2 years ago, they have a men's Royal Rumble and a women's Royal Rumble, but in the men's Royal Rumble they had Nia Jax in it, and Exactly. It was like, okay, why would you have a men's and a women's and then let a woman fight in a men's one? Like, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense when you get down to it. So I'm again back to the place of like, okay, if it was a mid-card belt, the 24/7 belt, someone commented, I was like, yeah, that's kind of a universal, but it's more of a joke than it is considered prestigious. And so that's the other thing is you don't want to make light, because that's what happened with the tag belts. And the Revival kind of talked about that when Braun won the tag belts with a 10-year-old. It kind of devalued the belts a little bit. It kind of made it seem like the belt was more of a joke than prestigious. And they kind of talked about how the belt meant nothing to them when they were offered the belts back. Well, the same thing could be said about somebody, and it may not even just be a woman. 9 out of 10 times you don't have a cruiserweight win the heavyweight championship. Why? Because it's just not believable half the time. And I think that's why I really struggled with even Tessa winning the TNA one. Is not because she's not talented, not because she's not good, not because of any of those reasons. It just, to me, didn't seem very believable. It didn't seem like if her and Brian Cage were to fight, do I think that she would beat Brian Cage? No, I don't. Her versus, even when she fought Sammy, I was like, her versus Sammy Callahan, I don't think that this is believable. And I know that people have different views on wrestling, whether it's believable or not. We have characters like Orange Cassidy, which are hilarious and people love, and it's not necessarily believable, but it just goes back to, if you want those belts to stay prestigious, I think if you're going to keep the titles that they have, you got to keep people within those realms too. There's always exceptions, and so that's why I'm kind of like, I won't shut the door completely. She wants to go to another company and do that. That's great. But I just don't think it's even really remotely, back to the topic. I don't think that was what she was saying in the interview. If you go and look at the actual quote, she just said that maybe she would do that someday, like that was something that would interest her. But ultimately she was just congratulating Tessa, congratulating the fact that women's wrestling was kind of making a more of a move in the right direction, and was just, kind of talking more about the women's revolution than it was about her pursuing a title. And that, again, happened a while back when Tessa won the belt, not more recently. So she didn't drop the NXT title to pursue men's belts. I think WWE had her drop it so she could be back on Raw.
I agree with you. And by the way, guys, this is not like an equal rights thing. That's not what I'm trying to get into with my answer. What it comes down to is there are companies out there on the indie scene that their belts, their championships, they're not gender specific. I think PWG is a good example of that. And if I'm wrong on this, someone please correct me. But back in the day, you had, why can't I think of the dude's name? Drawing a blank here. I got to look it up. But back in the day, you had, pull it up here. Back in the day, you had Joey Ryan and Candice LeRae win the PWG Tag Team Championship, but that's because I don't think PWG has a women's title. And if I'm wrong on that, someone please tell me. Actually, I'm just going to look it up myself real quick. No, it does not look like. So PWG, they only have a world title and a tag team title, and that's it. So if you're going to have championships that you want, let's put it this way: women should not hold men's championships. Men should not hold women's championships. If you want to have intergender wrestling, my opinions on it aside, then don't have gender-specific championships. Plain and simple. That's just my short and sweet answer. So, Michael Jones, World's Cutest Tag Team. That's right. Thank you. I couldn't think of Joey Ryan's name. Let's see.
Didn't mean to go off on a tangent on that. I've seen
a
lot of people.
Yeah, Eric Young. Michael makes a good point. Eric Young won the TNA Knockouts tag title,
but that was a joke.
Exactly.
And that's what I'm saying. If you go back and watch those segments, anytime these things happen, minus probably some of the ones that were named above, like China winning the IC, Medusa winning in WCW, those were taken as like that woman was being portrayed as almost over dominant, which is why I don't think Charlotte would ever be portrayed that way. But they were kind of portrayed that way. So I would say the storyline kind of fit the setting.
It fit the bill, so to speak.
But the Eric Young and ODB, that was booked to be funny. It was booked to be a joke. You go back and watch it, like Eric Young's running around like a moron. It was booked to be funny. Same like Santina Morella winning a women's belt. that was booked to be funny. It wasn't booked to be serious. But again, it devalued the belt. And if you go and look at what happens with those belts after, are the TNA Knockout Tag Team Champions even a thing anymore? I don't think so. I've never seen anything about them. The Divas belt was already devalued because it was kind of a poor division to begin with until the end of the Divas thing. There wasn't really a whole lot of really talented wrestlers. It was
so there's no longer a Knockouts tag title. It's just their world title, X Division title, tag team title, and the Knockouts title.
And I would say that's because it got devalued. And that's what happens. And we're seeing that happen to too many belts now, is that we almost make them comedic, or we almost put too much of a comedy spin on them sometimes, that it devalues the belt. And we don't want to keep doing that and heading down that road, because then you won't watch. And that's in any division. That's not, or any company. That's not just WWE. AEW, I think they're being very smart about who holds their belts.
Agreed.
Because you can't just have so-and-so hold it right off the bat. I'm okay with the comedy thing here and there. I'm okay with certain gimmicks. Like if Orange Cassidy was to ever be TNT champion, I think that would be fine with me. If they ever decided to give Sonny Kiss a push, I mean, there are people that are talented that have more off-the-wall gimmicks, I think, that could work. But I think AEW is being very smart about who holds their belts. WWE, I think they're getting to a place where they might be getting a little bit smarter about who holds their belts.
I think WWE just needs to do away with a bunch of their championships. I think that's also part of the problem, is that they, because they have so many, they're devalued. Not just because who holds them, but...
Well, because you got to find somebody. You always have to have people holding them, right? And when you have so many belts, that has to get passed around to the point that it almost gets devalued because of you don't have enough people that are ready for that role.
And I get that they have 3 different shows. I mean, and that's not including. I mean, do they still do main event? Do they still do? Let's see. They've got NXT, Raw, SmackDown. I don't know. Do they still do main event?
I think, if I'm not mistaken, those still somebody might, whoever watches WWE Network, I don't really pay attention to that. I think they still have main event on the network.
That's probably what it is, but they've got NXT UK. So I understand they have 5 different programs, but you still don't need. I mean, I'll tell you what, let's just count them. You've got actually it'll be quicker. I'll just look it up real quick. But I'm pretty sure I can't count using both hands how many titles they have. All right, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 championships between the 4 different brands: Raw, SmackDown, NXT, and NXT UK. 15. No, I'm sorry. There's more. Hold on. I got to go back. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18 championships between those brands. WWE Championship, Raw Women's Championship, United States, Raw Tags, Universal, SmackDown Women's, Intercontinental, SmackDown Tags, NXT, NXT Women's, North American, NXT Tags, NXT UK, UK Women's, UK Tags, Cruiserweight, 24/7, Women's Tag, 18 championships. You need to cut that in half, WWE. I'm sorry. Like, yeah, I get that they have a big roster, but I mean, I guarantee, and by the way, guys, I'm not saying AEW is perfect. I'm a fan of AEW. I'm not going to hide that. But at the same time, AEW is not going to have a bunch more titles or a bunch more championships whenever they eventually have 2 different shows. I think that they might have a 6-man tag title, and I think that's going to be it. I honestly do. I think they're going to learn from the mistakes that not only WWE, but back in the day, NWA, Jim Crockett Promotions, Mid-Atlantic Territory, whatever, some mistakes that they made, and not have, a dozen different titles. I think you're going to have the AEW Women's, the TNT, the tags, maybe a 6-man tags, or I actually read that they're going to call it a trios championship, which is, that's
common.
I'm cool with that. But I mean, I think that I wouldn't be surprised if that's all they ever do.
And I would say that if they aren't going to cut the belts, then they need to make things more brand exclusive. And what I mean by that is, we've kind of talked about this, is maybe one pay-per-view is just SmackDown, and one pay-per-view is just Raw, and one pay-per-view is, NXT already kind of has their own pay-per-view. But making it to where there's more limelight on those belts, and it's not just 10-minute matches for a United States or a 10-minute match for an Intercontinental, but you're allowing those matches to go a little bit longer and adding value back to that belt, because the feuds and the matches that happen for those belts are what create value of them.
Agreed.
And who holds those belts is what creates value for them. And so when you're only giving 10-minute matches, when you're putting people in feuds with people who shouldn't be in those feuds, another great example is Otis being the Money in the Bank. I think that devalued the briefcase, in my opinion.
I agree.
I think putting it on him when he's such a more of a comedic gimmick, I love him. I think he's hilarious. I think he's great for TV. I think he has a lot of potential, but you should have brought a little bit more serious kind of a moveset to him. And there's just some things that I think they could have done differently with him before putting him in that kind of a push. And I think ultimately it's going to flop because it devalued the briefcase. The briefcase was supposed to be for like a Dolph Ziggler, Edge. I mean, it blew Edge up. I mean, it is a huge stepping stone for wrestlers, and I don't think Otis is ready to take that step. And so what happens is we devalue these things when we put comedic storylines or people who are maybe halfway ready into those storylines. You can see that even in some of the mid-card title pictures sometimes, is that we put somebody like currently Apollo Crews. I think Apollo Crews is great. I still don't think he's good on the mic. And so you put this guy with this title during a time where you really should have really good mic skills because there's no crowd, and you give him the belt. And so far, I feel like his title reign is already kind of flat because he cannot go out there and work a mic. So he has to go out there and put on a good match. And then who does he have to work with on Raw that can put on a really good match with him? I mean, there's only a handful of guys. And they're using them, which is great. But then how long can he last with that belt on him before he has to lose it? And so then he loses the belt in a month because he can't be exciting on TV when there's no real fans. It's just wrestlers in the crowd. And so far, WWE's done a pretty poor job about having wrestlers in the crowd. So I don't know. I hate to get off on that tangent, but I feel like Otis fits more of a 24/7 type title than he does even being talked about winning anything of a main card title. I feel like a lot of the titles in WWE specifically are devalued. I think AEW has been pretty smart so far. I think Impact, they were trying to be different, which I can admire, because when you're on a lower scale compared to some of the other companies and you're trying to compete for views and trying to compete for people to watch your product, you do things different. I think NWA is smart for that. NWA tries to do things different and tries to do, a smaller setting crowd, kind of make it feel a little bit more old school. So you got to give credit to some of these companies for trying to be different. And I don't think either of us are saying that we're against that happening in other companies. But as far as WWE goes and their model, it just wouldn't work. And I think that if Charlotte really wanted to do that, she would have left already. And so I'm more of the belief that interview, because of how far back it dates that it happened, I'm more of a belief that she was saying that. Go look at the actual quote from her. Go watch the actual interview. And I think you'll understand that this was not Charlotte saying, yeah, in WWE, I'm going for a men's title. It was, I think it was cool. I think I would entertain the idea of doing that at some point, and I think it was great for the women's revolution.
Agreed. If you're WWE, and we'll get off this topic here in about a minute or two. I just want to give a final thought on this. As I'm giving my final thought, get your questions in. We're going to do our Ask the Host segment next. Basically, I think what they need to do is between Raw and SmackDown, cut those in half. So do away with the Universal title, do away with the brand-specific women's title. I would keep the Intercontinental title, do away with the United States, do away with the brand-specific tag titles. So you just have one of each. You have a main card, a mid card, a women's, and a tag across those two.
So do you get rid of the rosters then?
No.
SmackDown and Raw rosters, or do those champions have to travel to both to make it work?
I think you just completely do away with brand-specific rosters, period.
Gotcha.
I think NXT, you do the same. Between NXT and NXT UK, you do the same thing. You have one NXT title, do away with the UK stuff, have a main card, a women's, keep your North American, and do away with the UK specific tags. Now, I'll say this. From a belt design perspective, those NXT UK belts are probably the best ones WWE has. So keep that belt, but just get rid of the UK that's on it. Okay, so if we did that right now, we're at 4, 8, 12, 13, 14. So right now we're at, instead of it being at 15 that we normally would be, we would have 8. And then you've also got the Cruiserweight title. Do away with that completely, in my opinion. 24/7 championship. Do away with that, in my opinion. And then keep your women's tag belts. So instead of 18, you would have, how many is that? You'd have 9. So you're literally cutting it in half by doing what I would recommend that they do. And no disrespect to the Cruiserweight division, it's unfortunate that nobody watches it because they do put on good matches, but it's like it doesn't, from a live crowd perspective, that part falls flat when you're watching it live on TV. And that's unfortunate because the matches themselves are usually pretty good, but whenever a crowd is not into it or whenever there's no crowd, period, it just, like, case in point, go back to not WrestleMania this year, but last year. I forgot.
Tony Nese and
was it Buddy Murphy?
Buddy Murphy.
Tony Nese won the title.
Really good.
The match itself was really, really good, but the crowd was just dead. I mean, it was
and part of it's because it doesn't get featured on actual TV though, and now it does a little bit because it's on NXT. But at the time, that was 205 was literally just on the network. No one really went and watched 205 live. You had to be intentional about going and watching the Cruiserweight. And I even found 205 Live to be a little bit dry just watching it, which is hard. So going back to the original comment you made about cutting the titles in half, I definitely see where you're going with it, but just kind of look at some of the comments. I also see where other people are coming from. One, unless they get rid of, as far as the main roster goes, when I say main roster, I'm talking Raw and SmackDown because they still treat NXT like the redheaded stepchild. Don't know why, but that is what it is. Talking about Raw and SmackDown, if they don't get rid of brands' rosters, in a sense, then you have to have those titles on each show.
No, that's why I said
is why it's one or the other. You either have to get rid of the brand
agreed
rosters, or you have to make things more brand specific. Meaning Raw gets its own pay-per-views, SmackDown gets its own pay-per-views, and then create value that way. But if they were to get rid of those rosters, you wouldn't have the problem of not having a champion on each show because those champions would be universal for all those shows. I don't think either one works better than the other. I think you just got to find what mold it fits your setting best and then go with it. Right now, I think the brand specific rosters work because it gives people TV time and that's easier. But then let's bounce back every other pay-per-view and then do like 4 a year where everyone comes together. You know, the main 4, SummerSlam, WrestleMania, some of those big ones is Royal Rumble. When those come around, then it's a big deal when the two brands come together. But then make Extreme Rules a SmackDown one and make this one a Raw one, and that, and kind of go back and forth. I'd be okay with that. As far as like NXT UK and NXT, I think you do have to have separate titles because a lot of the UK guys can't travel to Florida and
well, I didn't get a chance to fully like elaborate on that part of it. If we were to do that scenario, you'd have to do away with the NXT UK brand, period. But people that are on the UK roster, offer to them to say, hey, you guys can, come to America. You'd have to stay here or travel back and forth on your own dime. But they like guys like Walter and Imperium. Well, I mean, Imperium's already on NXT. We've seen, whoever else. Coffee. What's his name?
Coffee. Anderson. Not Anderson.
Paul Coffey. Is that his name? I'm butchering his name.
I know who you're talking about.
Joe Coffey. But guys like that, bring them over or allow them to travel back and forth on their own dime, or maybe WWE could, do like a co-pay on travel or whatever. I don't know. But the point I'm getting at is, and I see some people commenting that say that, the roster is just too deep. I don't agree. I'm sorry. Maybe I have too much of an old school mentality that like I'm used to seeing there being 3, maybe 4 titles, and then that's it. I mean, I get the NWA had, a bunch. I mean, I actually want to go back to that comment because I found it kind of funny because it's true. Someone went through all the, Andrew says, it reminds me of NWA with the 6-man titles, U.S. tag titles, U.S. TV, Junior, World, National, Western States, UWF Tag, UWF TV, and Women's. That's literally what Jim Crockett Promotions was at one point. So, but then after that, I mean, late 80s, early 90s WWF, you had the WWF Championship, you had the Intercontinental Championship, you had the tag titles, and then mildly featured, you had the women's title. That was it. Later on, we'd get the European title.
Yeah, hardcore.
The hardcore title. And then, of course, it kind of just snowballed from there. Once you got to the point where, once you got past the 4, like I was okay with the European because at the time it was like, it was something new, something fresh. It was like, oh, this is...
And they treated it pretty well at first.
Agreed. But then it's like they brought the hardcore title in at that point where I was kind of like, yeah.
And that was for the ECW kind of audience, right? Like when they brought that hardcore thing in, it was really to try to cater to the people they were taking from ECW.
Yeah.
Which made sense to an extent, but so the only thing with that stinks is someone like Walter doesn't want to be in America full time. So I think the UK thing was set up for those guys who are what's the word, content with being where they live and not doing a lot of United States tours, but still making WWE look good where they're at. So again, it's all about what the company's overall goal is. I think WWE's overall goal is to expand into the entire world with their company, which, I mean, they're already there doing that, but like to have brands kind of branching out beyond that. But again, if they're going to do that, NXT UK obviously has their own pay-per-views. So I'm kind of okay with them having their own titles because they don't cross with anybody else. They stay with UK guys. If someone's going to come challenge, they have to go to the UK to challenge, and we don't really see it bleed over into NXT. We don't really see it bleed over into Raw or SmackDown. It's its own thing. NXT, for the most part, does the same thing. Every once in a while, we get a little bit of mesh here and there. Survivor Series, I like when they do those types of things.
Which that totally proved Keith Lee was ready for the main roster a year
ago.
Right,
so that was great to have 3 people competing at 3 brands competing at Survivor Series. I thought that was awesome.
Not to get off topic, I hope they continue to do that because that's very entertaining.
It was great. And so now I'm like, okay, cool. So Raw and SmackDown, though, is where you get the bleed over, though. Raw and SmackDown, I feel like, is you get all those titles and they start to bleed over into each other. And you can easily just move AJ Styles to SmackDown like nothing happened and say, oh, it was a trade, and now he's in the Intercontinental title picture. Where like NXT, you don't see that happen. You know, the titles mean something. So far, go look at all the NXT title reigns and tell me there wasn't one that didn't deserve to be NXT champion, NXT women's champion, NXT tag team champions. They've all, you go look at their reigns, a lot of them for the time, maybe looking back where they went after those reigns, didn't go very, very far. But where they were at the time, those teams, those people, that most of them were hot. They were enjoyed, and people liked watching them.
Bo Dallas, I think I'd put an asterisk by him.
I'm telling you, during the time that Bo Dallas was on NXT, he was hot. He was looking good. He had that people enjoyed his gimmick. Again, NXT's crowd is a little bit easier to please. If you watch any NXT shows, if you've been, I got a buddy who lives out there and goes to the NXT shows all the time. They get behind people a lot easier, so it's a lot easier to give people pushes and see how they would do. But I think Bo Dallas was a lot better than what people gave him credit for. I don't think his gimmick was main roster caliber, though. I don't think the little Bo Leave thing was main roster caliber to call him up and think that was going to work. I think he needed a rebrand when he came up. But people enjoyed him when he was in NXT.
And besides Bo Dallas, I'm just looking up and down some of the other, the historical aspect of all these title reigns across the board. Yeah, I agree. I mean, all of them seem to be what I would say passable. I mean, Matt Riddle and Pete Dunne, they kind of threw them together, but they made it work. I mean, at first I was kind of like, we'll see how this goes. But again, they made it work. And honestly, I actually think the way they took the tag belts off of them was too quick. I think it was too rushed. I don't know if Imperium was even the right pick. But anyway, we're getting off topic. I want to get to our Ask the Host segment in a second. I want to address one question or one comment, and then we'll get off this topic. Matthew, I'll just read his comment. By the way, Matthew, thank you for the comment. I appreciate it. He says, if you have a brand split, then you cannot get rid of the mid-card titles. They have too many wrestlers for there to be non-brand specific rosters. We've seen that before, and it sucked worse than it does now. Again, with my idea, you would not have a brand split. Like you'd have one WWE roster. 1 week you might compete on SmackDown. 1 week you might compete on Raw. 1 week you might compete on both. It's just kind of at the direction of WWE's creative. That's what it comes down to. That was the premise of my whole idea.
Not to mention on that, WWE doesn't do a very good job of booking the right people. So you got to make sure you have the right people who are there writing the storylines and booking, because a lot of these guys are capable of being in non-title storylines to where they could get TV time, they could look good, and not need to be in a title picture. There's also a lot of times where you don't have to have one specific challenger going after a belt, and I think we forget that in WWE a lot. So you got all these talented guys, so where you could be doing more fatal four-ways, more triple threats, more 6-man or 5-pack challenges and stuff, and give a lot of people showcase times, make a lot of believable matches that set up storylines outside of the title again. I think a lot of it goes back to creative and story writing, or storytelling, I should say. That when they were doing that, there was also no AEW. There was really nothing challenging WWE during that time of no brand specific things, and so I feel like they really were just featuring the top guys on every show every single week, and they weren't building anybody else up beyond that. And so now you have so many talented guys that each week you could be building different storylines. NXT was really smart because when NXT wasn't even on TV, you could be a top guy and you're not on TV for 2 weeks.
Exactly.
And you're still a top guy. You're still, when you get on the mic, people enjoy you. They go nuts after you. There's a way to do it. They just don't. And so I think a lot of it has to speaks to the fact that you have to have the right creative and storytelling there, and utilize who you have for storylines that are good without a title. And I think people have talked about this before on our show in comments. I've seen it in Facebook groups, is that not every feud needs a title. Not every match needs to be a title match. We can do non-title things. We can do things without titles and they still be entertaining. And so I'm for either. I think either if they're going to keep brands, then they need to make things more brand specific and make pay-per-views that are brand specific and get back to a place of putting value there, or they need to do away with the brands and get back to, okay, we got these many titles. We'll make great storylines for these, but we're also going to build storylines that are great without a title.
Yeah, 100% agreed. Real quick,
promotional consideration paid for by the following.
Please get your questions in for our Ask the Host segment in just a minute or two. We'll get to a few questions, and then we'll do our predictions for Backlash this Sunday. But I do want to let you guys know, as far as our podcast goes, if you're watching us live right now, and if you want to check out any of our prior shows later, you can check them out at facebook.com/goingbroadwaypodcast. You can also check those out at goingbroadwaypodcast.com/YouTube. Those are a couple of our social media platforms. Excuse me. We are also on Twitter and Instagram. Just 1 second, guys. Pardon me. Instagram and Twitter handles at goingbrdwypod. Again, our YouTube link is there. Facebook link is over there. And then our Instagram and Twitter handle is below Cole's video picture, if you will. Please follow our Instagram and Twitter pages. Please like us on Facebook. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel. If you do all 4 of those, you're guaranteed to be entered into any and all future giveaways, including our next one. Again, we will be doing that once we hit 5,000 Facebook likes and 1,000 Twitter followers. We got a ways to go on Facebook. We got about 950 to go, but we only need about 50 more on Twitter. So please share our pages in your groups with your family, with your friends, anyone and everybody that you can tell them about our podcast. We'd appreciate it. The little ticker at the bottom of our screen goes through all of that information. If you ever have any questions about our links, our pages, et cetera, et cetera. We are also now on Patreon. If you would consider becoming one of our patrons, check us out at patreon.com/goingbroadwaypodcast. We've got 4 tiers that you can pick from, as much as $50 a month and as cheap as $5 a month, but they each have their own perks and benefits, including additional giveaways, additional giveaway entries, and all of our future giveaways, whether it's belt giveaways, t-shirt giveaways, other merch giveaways, etc. Again, that's patreon.com/goingbroadwaypodcast. We have 4 different tiers, so check those out if you're interested. Each one has its own perks and benefits. Again, anywhere from $5 to $50 a month gets you more entries into all of our giveaways going forward. Free t-shirts, free hoodies, discounts on future purchases of our merchandise. That's pretty much it. So, tell you what, Cole, I'll let you tackle a first question. I'll let you pick which one you want to do first. We got time for about 5 or 6 of these questions. They might be more rapid fire, but
Because we got to get to our predictions.
yeah, we got about 5 or 6. We got time for about 5 or 6, and then we'll do our predictions. We got about 30-ish minutes left in our show.
I like the someone asked about I can't find it now, but someone was asking about. Oh, here it is. What's your favorite finisher? Thanks, Matt. Sylvain, I think that's how you say your last name.
Sylvie.
He's
French.
What's your favorite finisher you have seen live? And then he says mine is the brain buster off the top rope onto the turnbuckle.
Ouch.
Actually, so I was at the.
Hold on. So does he mean live like in person or live like watching it on TV live?
I'm taking it as live in person.
Okay. That's how I'll answer it too then.
For me, I was at the 1,000th episode of Raw, and I didn't get good seats at all. I was in the nosebleeds for this show, but at the very end of the show, The Rock comes out, and The Rock hit the rock bottom, and it's not the most creative finisher move in the world, but the whole place just went nuts when he hits the rock bottom and the people's elbows. So for me, like that's probably the most memorable, like favorite finisher move that I've seen. I mean, I've seen a lot of them now live, but I think that one sticks out the most just because of how nuts the place went when he hit the rock bottom.
So it wasn't the finisher to the match, but it looked like it was going to be. So I was at AEW Revolution earlier this year, and during and I'll talk about this tag match ad nauseum. I mean, it was just as good live as watching it on TV, and you can find the links for it on YouTube and DailyMotion.com, and you can find it out there. But the tag match with Hangman Adam Page and Kenny Omega against the Young Bucks, they set up their V-Trigger. Why do I forget Hangman Page's clothesline? What's the name of that? Buckshot Lariat.
Yeah, Buckshot.
The V-Trigger Buckshot Lariat combo onto Matt Jackson, but Matt Jackson kicked out. Like the place just erupted whenever everyone thought the match was over, but he kicked out. It was just like, whoa. Like, and at this point, the match had already gone like 25 minutes. So it was, it was like a guarantee that it was going to end, but like it kept going. We're just like, wow, this is like, I'm thinking at the time, this is the greatest match I've ever seen. And I've watched the Omega Okada series. I've watched all 4 of their matches, and I remember thinking at the time, this might very well be the best match I'll ever watch. The match only went about another 5 minutes, and it was. I still think Okada and Omega's match that went 2 out of 3 falls went over an hour. It's still the best match I've ever seen. But I will say that this tag match is probably. I don't know if it's I don't know if it's second or not. It's worst case scenario. It's in my top 3, the best matches I've ever watched in my life. But just setting up that teaser finisher, I'll call it, and then he kicked out. It was just the place erupted. It was a fantastic match. And then if that match again, it only went about 5 more minutes. If that match would have went like another 15 minutes at the pace that they were still going with all of the false finishes and the teases of finishes and things like that, it could have very well been the best match I'd ever seen. Let's see.
Someone said slingshot suplex from Tully Blanchard.
Doomsday Device, Thomas.
Yeah.
All right. I'll tackle a question. I might try to pick a quick answer question just because we want to make sure we get to our predictions and we have enough time to do that. Okay, I'm gonna address this question because I posted something on a couple of social media pages, kind of as a joke or whatever. Jamie says, "What did you guys think of the Inner Circle beating the Pulp out of the Orange Cassidy storyline?" LOL. Again, Jericho lights up the commentary table, and the stories this man generates is gold. I thought it was funny. I thought it was hilarious. I posted a couple of jokes that or puns, I should say. I said something along the lines of. So Orange Cassidy, this was the first time I've ever seen him bleed, and I posted a couple of jokes. Actually, I need to pull up the post so I don't butcher it, and hopefully I find it. But whatever that was going on, I'm just like, okay, there are some puns here for sure. And actually, I was making myself laugh whenever I posted these. Okay, so I basically said, Orange Cassidy blading, so many puns. I said Blood Orange Cassidy, because blood orange. Orange Cassidy juiced himself. Orange got color. And then I also said Orange Giggity.
I like Orange Giggity. That should be on a shirt.
So
Orange Giggity. I like that.
But whenever Jericho said that they beat the Pulp out of Orange, that was just anything Jericho says, it's just.
So, like, just to answer that question shortly, like, the match itself was great last night, first off. He was exciting to watch. When they pulled out so I already had an idea something was going to happen because we have our little group chat, Alex and I and a buddy of ours, that he bled. And I was like, oh, okay, I got to go watch this.
Yeah.
Because I had never seen that. So I went and watched it, and when they pulled out the sack of oranges, I was like, what in God's name is about to happen right now?
Mm-hmm.
And I just thought it was an entertaining segment. Like, it was good. I like what they're doing. I think this is a great example of a good storyline that does not have a title involved. And I think it's exciting. I think it's fun to watch. I think there's good matches to be had out of the combination of Best Friends, Orange Cassidy with the Inner Circle, and some different things there. So I enjoyed it. I thought it was fun to watch. I can't tell if he bled the hard way or the easy way.
I think he.
It looked like he bladed.
I think he bladed because it was by his hairline. I think it's either by his hairline or they said he was bleeding out of his ear. I couldn't tell, but if you're bleeding out of your ear, that's not the hard way. Like, you basically cut a slit in your ear is what it is. So
I don't know. But I thought it was great. I thought it was a great segment. I like that they're using him more, and they're kind of giving him a build now.
So, your turn. I'll tell you what, guys. For the sake of time, Cole will tackle one more, and then I'll tackle one more, and then we really probably should get to our recaps because we actually need to be wrapping this up in about 20 minutes.
All right. I'm stuck between these two. I'm gonna go with this one because I want to speak on it. So David says, do you think AEW would have Jim Cornette come in and manage FTR for one match? Did y'all hear the interview with FTR on Cornette's podcast? Would he bring in viewers? And I would say this: Cornette should not be on anyone's promotion at all because he is such a poor sport, I feel like, to when it comes to the current climate of the business.
Agreed.
He hates just about everything that doesn't come off as maybe old school, would be the term. And I think that's why he likes FTR, because FTR has a great, more classical type of wrestling. But I think you bring him in, you cause too many problems with AEW as far as who's there behind the scenes. I just think he's too much of a mouth to even get him involved. I enjoy his podcast from time to time because he says a lot of controversial things, and that's how you get views. And so from time to time, I think there's some things that he says that's interesting. There's also times where I think he says some very uncalled for things, some things that just didn't need to be said. And I just don't think that'd be good. I don't know why FTR would want him to manage. If this was 10 years ago, maybe. But with a lot of the things he's said here currently in the past couple months, just some of the way that he handles himself, I just don't think it would go well. It might get views from the standpoint that people want to see if he get punched or beat up or something, but I wouldn't care to see it. Like, it wouldn't. I don't think it would bother me if he did, but I wouldn't be like pumped if he did, if that makes sense.
Okay, so do you think AEW would have Jim Cornette come in and manage FTR for one match? No. Did y'all hear the interview with FTR and Cornette's podcast? No. Would he bring in viewers? No. He'd actually lose a viewer, because if AEW ever brought in Jim Cornette, I would stop watching. Pure and simple. I don't think Jim Cornette has any right to be in any company. He has, not to, I don't know. Sorry I can't put it in better wording, but he has no business in the wrestling business, in my opinion, just because of the thing he said. Things that he has said. I don't think AEW would touch him, just because he's too controversial. Michael says Cornette burns too many bridges.
Don't get me wrong. Like, we're not talking about his legacy, because obviously there's a lot of great things that Cornette's brought to the business over the years. But here more recently, just like what things that happened with Hulk Hogan in the past, you don't bring Hulk Hogan in when he said some things that are questionable and could create bad publicity. And so I just don't think you bring him in, because I think it just causes too many. I think he would cause too many problems off camera.
Andrew says AEW brings in Cornette and WWE puts the strap on Charlotte. This will become a New Japan and Ring of Honor podcast. Exactly. We'll
even do NWA and Impact.
We'll watch NWA more. We'll cover the indies more, which we actually, once we have crowds and stuff and live events, Cole and I have talked about checking out some of our local indie shows, and that's something we still want to do at some point. But I'll tell you what, guys. Again, for the sake of time, we'll do one more question, and let's see. I just got to pick which one I want to do.
There's a couple good ones. So.
Yeah, I think there's one I want to do. I just have to find it and see how it was worded. And I want to give credit to the person that asked. Okay. Don from YouTube, he says, what do you think of the TNT title? Now, this is kind of a two-part answer. As far as the concept of the title, the championship itself, I'm a fan of it. I love it. I like how they're booking it. I think Cody was the right call. As far as their first champion, I read something about some actor who I've never even heard of said that he thought it was in poor taste to put the belt on Cody, that the giants of wrestling are dead, that they should have put it on I keep wanting to call him Lance Hoyt. Lance Archer. I disagree. I think Lance Archer still has some work to do in the ring. I think that would have been a poor choice. And by the way, again, I don't even remember the actor's name, but I just was like, who is this guy? Why are wrestling websites picking up on this? I've never heard of the guy. Why does he have any relevant opinion that's being picked up by a wrestling website? Again, anyway, but as far as the belt itself, I'm going to be in the minority on this. So it's been speculated, rumored, whatever, that it's not finished yet. I don't necessarily agree or disagree that it's not finished yet. The belt in its current form, I don't hate on it as much as a lot of people do. I think because all of our expectations, mine included, were so high, and then to see what we got as fans whenever we first saw it, and the fact that how it was revealed, it was revealed on Instagram with Mike Tyson holding it. Like we didn't get our first view of it live, being pulled out of the bag or anything, which, by the way, I think they did that because of, anticipated backlash that it was going to be hated upon. But the belt itself, if we didn't get our expectations so high, I would still kind of be like, okay, it's not bad, it's not great. It's just kind of bland. If I'm putting it in a polite way, I guess. I like the red strap on it. I like the side plates on it. I like the it's akin to the old Ted Turner mansion or their studios or whatever. So that part's cool. if they just put a little bit of work on that main plate so it wasn't so bland or cut and dry, maybe add stacked plates to where it says it has the TNT on it. Maybe put it on a white strap instead of a red. I mean, although I do like the red because it's kind of akin to the old school NWA TV belt. But yeah, Don says the belt in its current form is ugly and lacks imagination. That's a good way to put it. I wouldn't say it's ugly in my opinion. Although I do see why people think it's ugly. But I think I would have been more okay with. It was rumored at one point that the belt was going to be very, very similar to the old NWA TV title with the red strap, but it was going to have lacing on it. It was going to have the same shape as the TV belt. And then when we saw what we got, it was very underwhelming at best. James says, but for a mid-card title, I think it's fine. Everything looks great besides the big empty space. Exactly. That's what it comes down to. I just saw your your post on here.
He asked a question. I just gave him my thoughts.
Oh, as a separate question. I see. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So your thoughts on the TNT title? We got about
really quick because
2 minutes.
It's not really hard for me. I'm not really big on how titles look as much as I am about how they're used. So far I've enjoyed the matches that we've gotten out of the TNT Championship. And I think to me that speaks more volumes than how it actually looks. Now I get it needs to look presentable because it needs to look like it's valued or desired after. The current look of it doesn't really bother me. I think it could be better. And I think eventually it will be better. But currently I'm more concerned about how the quality of matches that it produces. And so far I thought Lance Archer and Cody put on a great match. It was by far Lance Archer's best match to date in AEW. I thought that Cody and Jungle Boy put on a great match.
That put Jungle Boy on the map even more so.
2 weeks ago, I thought the one last night was good. I don't think it was better than the other two, but I still think it was good, and I just like that it's bringing people out of the woodworks and giving them a limelight a little bit, even if there's no plans to put a belt on them or give them like a big push. But I think it's really giving people the opportunity to show how great they are. And I think eventually you'll see bigger names kind of get involved with that. Some people are saying MJF. There'll be some other bigger names. I like the tease of Jake Hager last night as well. So there'll be some other names that get involved in that. But I think as long as the quality of matches are being treated like the Intercontinental belt used to be treated, even the United States, that as long as that's being treated as the stepping stone for some guys to really get some good TV time, and Cody's doing a great job of making sure that happens, I'm cool with it. The belt doesn't look so bad to me that it can't be desired after, and I think eventually they'll fix that. But I'm more concerned about how it's used. So
agreed. And Thomas makes a good point. I just want to read this real quick. I'm cool with the quote-unquote TV title, but I'm not sure they should have put TNT on the main plate. What happens if in 2 or 3 years the contract with TNT ends, doesn't get renewed, and they go to another network? They'll just rename the title. They'll have a different belt made, or they'll redo the center plate or something like that.
I think that speaks to their loyalty. I think at the end there's probably a really great relationship there for that to happen. And TNT likes wrestling. They just have never been able to keep it with the company that they're using, because they were, what was it, SmackDown? I think they had SmackDown for a while. They had one of the promotions for a while.
TNT, I think they just had Nitro.
Was it Nitro?
They had WCW Nitro, and that was it.
And they liked it. I think they've been wanting something. So I think it just speaks to their loyalty more than anything, and I don't really see them going anywhere unless they just can't afford to do it. Like if they start to dwindle, but I don't see that happening.
All right, guys, let's change gears, and we're going to do our predictions for Backlash this Sunday. Again, if you did not catch our announcement to kick off the show, next week we will actually be live 3 different times, Monday and Thursday at 10 a.m. Eastern, 9 a.m. Central, like our usual. We'll also be live this upcoming Sunday night at 7 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Central. We are going to do a watch party from here inside the studio during Backlash. So, again, join us at this Sunday night, 7 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Central. We'll watch some Backlash. We'll have some fun. We'll chat. We'll see what happens. So let's do our predictions. Which one do we want to tackle first? Let's say
You want to work our way up?
depends on what you're looking
So like
at.
I'm looking at Seth Rollins versus Aleister Black.
That is not on my list. Backlash.
Oh, those are predicted matches that are going to happen.
Okay, yeah, I'm
Because
just
there's also I don't think this card's complete yet because there's also a rumor that there'll be an Intercontinental Championship match as well.
yeah, we're just gonna go with what we know.
So it'd be Sheamus and Jeff Hardy then.
Yeah, so let's start with that. Sheamus and Jeff Hardy. I don't know. That's kind of
I
a
think
tough
it's
one.
easy. I'm
Really?
going Jeff Hardy. I think there's bigger plans
That
for
was
Jeff.
That was
and
kind of my initial.
especially with how they booked that storyline. I think it just speaks volumes that they're gonna have him redeem himself. And
Yeah, I'll go Jeff Hardy also on this one. What's the next one on your list? We'll
I
just go
got,
by your list.
I got Apollo Crews versus Andrade for the United
Okay.
States Championship.
Now, are we going to pick a winner, or are we going to say who's coming out of the match with the belt? Because we could easily say Andrade gets the win or Apollo Crews gets the win, but it could be a count out or DQ kind of thing.
I think Apollo Crews retains. However that happens, whether it's a
Okay,
DQ,
that we'll call it that.
whatever. I think Apollo Crews walks out as champion.
Okay, I agree with that.
I think potentially Angel Garza could play a role in this match and actually disqualify Andrade. And there might be some bad blood from the match that they had this past week with Kevin Owens to qualify for this match. So
Don says Andrade. He's already going with a bravery test pick.
I like don't get me wrong, Andrade is good, but why keep flipping the title back and forth? That just doesn't make a lot of sense.
I mean, other than quick shock value, I mean that's really about it.
I think Apollo Crews is going to hold this till SummerSlam. So
Okay. The next one on your list.
I have the women's tag belts: Bayley and Sasha versus
Okay.
Nikki Cross and Alexa Bliss versus the Iconics. I'm looking to you. I want to see what you think first. I have my pick, but
Well, I'm not going Alexa and Nikki on this one. Let me think. So there is another pay-per-view between now and SummerSlam. I'm going to say Bayley and Sasha keep the belts, but they're still going to tease their split. I think they'll hold on the belts for a little bit longer. I mean, same reason. I don't see why you would hotshot those belts after they just won them. What was it? Was it last Friday? Yeah, it was last Friday SmackDown. So that's my pick.
I like your answer. I see where you're going, but I'm gonna have to take
You're going for your bravery pick now, aren't you?
I gotta take a left turn here.
Uh-oh.
I think this is where the Bayley and Sasha breakup happens.
Uh-oh.
I do. I think this is where it happens. I'm going to say that the tag belts are about to become iconic.
Let's see. Matt says Iconics.
I think Iconics, and the reason why I said is they've already teased a women's tag match with Shotzi and Tegan. I just don't think you need Bayley and Sasha on NXT. I could see that
Okay.
it would be a good thing, but that's kind of playing into my pick is that I could see the Iconics doing more on NXT with Shotzi and Tegan than I could Bayley and Sasha. So
Okay.
I'm gonna have to say Iconics. I could be wrong. I definitely could see where you're going, especially if they're slow building this Sasha turn. But we could see Charlotte interfere in this match that causes some interference. Because her, Bayley, and Sasha seem to kind of have a mini feud going on. So
Let's see.
don't
Matt
know.
says Iconics. Lynn says Nikki and Bliss regain. Don Iconics. Jamie says Bayley and Sasha. Saki the sock puppet.
that's a great name, by the way.
It says Iconics. Steve says Bayley and Sasha. David says Bayley and Sasha. Just one. I think it's too soon. Michael, same thing. Logan, same thing. But he also says Bayley faces Sasha at SummerSlam. I agree with that.
Understand there's still extreme rules in between this, which is what Alex was talking about, is that there's still one more pay-per-view that turn could happen. I would like to see Bayley and Sasha have an Extreme Rules match at Extreme Rules, and then also have one at SummerSlam. I'd like to see at least two matches out of that.
Michael makes a huge pick.
I was looking at that.
Shotzi and Tegan will win the tag belts.
I'm interested. I'd
love to see it.
It wouldn't make me mad, but that's why I think if that's going to happen, it goes to the Iconics.
All right, we got about 5 minutes left. We'll have to kind of breeze through these. What's next on your list?
The greatest wrestling match ever.
Garbage.
Edge versus Randy Orton.
I'm not disputing it won't be a good match, but it's not going to be the best wrestling match ever.
The greatest wrestling match ever.
Now, I will say this. It's been recorded. It's been shot already, and a lot of people have said it's a good match, and it's a long match. So don't be surprised if this goes 30, 40 minutes.
The greatest wrestling match ever.
I think Orton is going to win only because I'm looking at it from a behind the scenes backstage perspective. I think Edge would kind of look at it, and Edge is very good about what is going to be better for storylines, what's better for business, quite frankly, not to be cliche-ish, but I think Edge would look at it from the standpoint of, I don't really benefit from winning this match. Randy might benefit more. Like, Randy's probably got more years left than Edge, in my opinion. Could be wrong on that. I don't know. But I'm just basing my answer off the fact that if they're looking at it from a creative standpoint, I can see Edge saying, well, I don't really benefit from winning this. I won the match at WrestleMania. I think Orton gets the win here.
So, it depends on what happens, because this could potentially lead to a third match, because they had the WrestleMania match. If Orton wins this match, I could see the storyline even going a little bit further and having a third match, which could play into people's opinions.
I'm just reading some comments on here.
But ultimately, I am going to have to disagree. I'm going Edge.
Okay.
And the reason why is because I read an interview that said Edge felt like he wasn't ready to fight some of these newer names yet because he needed to get comfortable back in the ring again with somebody he trusted, and Randy was the perfect guy. I think they're going to have a great match. I think they're both going to come out looking strong, but the storyline to this is what decides my answer. It's the fact that they're saying Edge can't go in the ring anymore, so he's got to look strong in the match if he's going to lose. Mm-hmm. But I think it looks even better and sets him up for better storylines if he wins. And so I'm going to go Edge. I think Edge is going to win the greatest wrestling match ever.
David says, greatest wrestling match ever. I think Flair will beat Steamboat. That's a comment I was laughing at. I love it. I got to agree with some of these people that say, Michael says can't compare to Savage and Steamboat. I
guess we won't really know until we see the match, but I think giving those two the platform of greatest, and I think Edge came out and said he didn't really care for the title of that, because I don't think it does either of them justice, because there's so many arguments of the greatest wrestling match ever, and I don't think you can put that title on a match that hasn't happened yet. And so I think that they would have been better off saying that after the match if it was that good and perceived that well. But to put so much high expectations on a match of a guy who hasn't wrestled in 9 years and another guy who has struggled to be relevant, I should say, in his time in the past couple of years, I just don't think that you can put the title of greatest wrestling match ever on it beforehand.
Okay. For time's sake, we are going to have to kind of
let's go quick.
Breeze past these.
Three for sure's left, which is Asuka versus Nia Jax. I think both of us know our answer for that one.
Asuka.
I'm going Asuka. I think Nia will be off TV for a little bit after that.
Oh, I hope so.
Then we have the Universal Championship, Braun Strowman versus The Miz and Morrison. Hey.
I'd be shocked if Braun doesn't keep the belt.
My prediction, Braun Strowman wins, and then you will see The Fiend
return,
show up. Not Bray Wyatt, The Fiend.
Right.
Show up, and it'll set up for a feud that might take us all the way to SummerSlam, or it might take us through Extreme Rules, and then we might get the Roman Reigns return at SummerSlam. Just might. You never know. And then we got Drew McIntyre versus Bobby Lashley. I know my pick.
I'm still going McIntyre. I mean, I know we talked about it on last. Actually, did we talk about that on our last show, or did we?
I think we might have had a small conversation about because we talked about it from the.
We did. Okay, I couldn't remember if that was just like in a private chat, or if we actually addressed that whole. Yeah, we did.
Yeah, we addressed that.
I still think McIntyre retains. I wouldn't be surprised if we get another match with these two. Again, whether it's a clean win, whether it's a DQ on either end or a count out on either end, I still think we're going to get another match with Lashley and McIntyre. I don't think we'll see the end of this feud. By the way, what I was referring to is there's rumors that WWE will try to, I'll guess for lack of a better way of putting it, capitalize on the current social issues going on right now and put the belt on Lashley. And we talked about how, from a storyline perspective, I think that would be an awful move. I still think it would be an awful move. Keep the storyline going. McIntyre retains. That's your pay-per-view.
I'm going Drew McIntyre as well. I don't think it's smart to put the belt on Lashley, especially with how new Drew's title reign is. I think you need to let him run with it for a little while. So I'm going Drew. I think there might be another match out of this. People keep talking about this Bobby Brock thing. If they're going to do that, they can do it without a belt. They do not need a belt for that to take place.
They don't even need to do it on SummerSlam.
And I'm okay if that happens on SummerSlam.
I don't think that's a big four pay-per-view marquee match.
It could be on the card. That's fine with me, as long as the belt's not involved. I don't think we got to have a belt involved with a Brock Lesnar storyline every time he comes back. I think that could be a match that's booked very well because of their MMA backgrounds. They're kind of similar styles and whatnot. So there's that. And then just because they're predicted, and I think they'll happen, just quick answer, Street Profits versus Viking Raiders for the tag belts. Who do you got?
Street Profits.
I'm going to go Street Profits as well. And then Seth Rollins versus Aleister Black.
I'd say Aleister Black if they have it. I think Aleister Black needs a big win, and I think that's how he would get it.
I'm going Aleister Black as well. We might see an Intercontinental title match added to this after tomorrow night's decider of who wins.
Which again, that's rumored to. It's the rumored. Rewind again. The Daniel Bryan AJ Styles match is rumored to be a very good match. So check that out, guys. I'm looking forward to seeing it myself. Probably won't get to watch it live, but nonetheless, I'm excited to see that. If there is an Intercontinental title match, I would say that whoever wins, whoever's champion retains. So that's going to about do it for us, guys. Thanks for hanging out with us and participating in our Ask the Hosts and giving us your takes and opinions on the pay-per-view Sunday. Again, normally I would say check us out Monday, but we'll be back before Monday. We will be back this Sunday night for a special edition of the Going Broadway podcast. We'll be having a watch party for Backlash. So join us this Sunday night at 7 p.m. Keep wanting to say a.m. 7 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. in the Central Time Zone. Cole, any final thoughts?
Just excited. Can't wait to hang out with you guys Sunday night. It's going to be a cool experience, I think, for all of us to kind of watch live with you guys and kind of give you our candid thoughts right then and there.
We might do some commentary. Who knows?
Yeah, we might be better at commentary. Who knows? We might get a better result out of that. But I think just to get our pure right then and there thoughts would be cool. And we might talk a little bit more about it on Monday's show as well. And after we've had time to digest it. So excited to hang out with you guys.
Cool. All right, guys, that's going to about do it for us. Again, thanks so much for supporting us, for hanging out with us. We sincerely appreciate it. We enjoy ourselves. We enjoy the conversation and hanging out with you guys. Once again, check us out Sunday night, special time, Sunday night, 7 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Central, and we will catch you guys then.
And so, goodbye. Mwah. And good night. Bang!
This podcast was a presentation of LightUpMedia.fm.